Good afternoon, my fellow teachers. Today for our PD, I will be discussing how discrete trial training will benefit our students with autism. See, discrete trial training is a part of our ABA, which is our Applied Behavior Analysis. It's going to help us in the long run change the behavior or skill acquisition we're looking to receive with our particular student. With autism, we have to find ways and see what fits best for the child because it's such a wide open spectrum for the different things that each child has. No one training or one trial or anything along that is really going to help all the kids. So we have to be prepared for many different ways in which we could interpret and enhance the child's learning. So the one thing we're going to talk about today is discrete trial training. Discrete trial training is really, we're going to be looking at a particular behavior or skill we're looking to help the student acquire. With that, there's many different steps that we have to do. Based on my research, I found that probably the most important thing that we must all do is we must be trained correctly in how to deliver or proceed with discrete trial training. If we aren't trained correctly, it's going to have a direct effect on the outcome of the student's trial training. We must be well versed in the many different things that has to be done in this type of training. The thing is, if we're not correct with our delivery of it or reinforcement or knowing where we should go to after the next step, or if we're just have materials all out in front of them, there's many different things that will affect this child's ability to learn the new skill or learn the new behavior that we want them to acquire. So with that saying, there are basically 6 elements we're going to focus on right now. The 6 elements we're going to focus on is discriminative stimulus, instructional control, natural cueing, clearing the field, components do not overlap each other, and we're going to look into reinforcement right now. Discriminative stimulus is basically, to sum it up and for all of us to understand, is the child has to have interest. We have to gauge their interest. We have to connect with them. There has to be a way that when we're doing this trial that they want to improve on this too, which could be probably one of the most difficult parts in our training that we're going to do with the child. As you know, with autism, there is some trials where the kids don't really connect with us and things like that. So we have to know there's a social communication part that really is a struggle for a lot of our students with autism. So in this thing, we have to gauge the interest and get them wanting to learn this new behavior or the new acquisition of a skill. Because if the student's not interested in this skill, it's going to really affect the results of discrete trial training. So we must gain their control, interest in this, so that they understand that we're there and we're trying to help them and improve that. Because if there's no communication between us and there's no connection, it's going to make this a little bit harder in the long run. And not that it won't be successful, it will just make the steps a lot harder to gain some of the things we need to gain from this. The following thing we do is instructional control. We have to control the setting. We have to have these kids and these students, ready to learn. If we don't have them focused and ready to learn, then it's going to be hard for them to keep trying to go with the cueing and go with the step-by-step process. Because what we're trying to do is we're going to give them like 10 trials, and we're trying to get them to really get 9 out of 10 trials. And once we do that, we can move on to the next angle, the next part of the behavior that we're looking to learn. With that, we have to understand that these students, that we are in control and that we're making sure that they're ready to learn. Eye contact. I know it's difficult, but we can focus on that. Make sure they're sitting up. Proper things that we can focus on that will help the students engage in the learning and engage in the activity of the trial. Natural cueing, the more natural we can make this, where we're not prompting them and leading them along as much, is only going to benefit the student. The less that we do, and the more, I'm just kind of talking a little bit both ways here, with the natural cueing and instructional control. We want to control the environment, but the cueing to learning new behavior, we want to make as natural as it can, because the more natural it is, the more likely it is that the child is going to learn and keep the behavior a part of their daily lifestyle. Then the next thing we do when we're talking about students and what we do is cueing and how we go through this. We don't want anything to overlap, and the next 2 components kind of tie in with each other. It's clearing the field. and components do not overlap. We want to make sure that when students are performing these tasks, that there's no distraction for them. So we're clearing the field. We're making sure that whatever we're working on, that's the only thing that's on the table and that they're focusing on or in front of them. We don't want many things to gather their eyesight and see what's going on, because when we do that, the kids are going to have trouble focusing on what we need them to do. So we must clear everything as we're going through it to not overlap the components. So like the antecedent, like the new behavior we're trying to correct, the stimulus, the natural cueing to the behavior to the consequential reinforcement. So we want to make sure there's no overlapping with these and that we're clearing the field after every trial. So we don't want to have the same trial going on and then have that stuff laid out and then we move on to something else. So with that, if we're not clearing everything in front of them, it will disturb them and it's going to affect the results of them learning this new skill or behavior. Enforcement, all right, reinforcement, consequences, depending on what the verbiage you want to use, but really the same. The thing is, we want to make it as positive as you can. We all know when it comes to learning and we want to correct the behavior, the more positive we are with them and the feedback we give them, the more likely they are to learn it. So when they get a correct response, we want to have an immediate kind of reinforcement on that. It could be visual cues, it could be a token, it could be anything that you want. You know, it's hopefully not using too much, but food reinforcement. We want to make it so that whatever they're doing, that they are now focusing on that reinforcement. So if they do not get, you know, what I would use in the trial, if we do not see the behavior we want, instead of immediate reinforcement or, you know, we're going to go back and not negative reinforce it, but kind of go back to the beginning and start that trial again, hoping that we can get that proper consequence and give them positive reinforcement in the end. By doing so, we can make sure that the student is now learning towards that way. If I go through all these steps and they're not getting it, I need to know as a teacher that I need to reassess where they're at. I'm going to go back and I'm going to focus on making sure that after I do all the scoring that, you know, maybe they weren't ready for that particular step. Maybe I should bring that step down a little bit and start over again. You know, for example, if we're talking about conversation starting. You know, I want to see the behavior that when they look at me, they say hi and shake my hand. Well, maybe as I'm doing that, saying hello and shaking of a hand is too much to handshaking. So maybe I need to revert back and just work on hello. Maybe eye contact, look at the person when they're speaking. That might be a better step to start out with than getting a whole handshake about I got ahead of myself. So the child now, you know, didn't happen correctly, but now I would go back and look at it, and the positive reinforcement for that would be I would look at them in their eye and be like, hello, Brian, you know, so that they're starting to correct it. Then maybe I would start later on in trials, give the handshake so that now they understand when they say hello to me, I'm shaking their hand. These 6 elements are vital to what we're trying to do with discrete trial training. Without having these elements and focusing on these and being properly trained, the student will have issues in acquiring these new skills, and discrete trial training won't be beneficial for them. As the experts, we need to make sure that we are trained correctly, and when we are trained correctly, the students can succeed. After all, everything we're trying to do in education is to help betterment of our students. Every student we come in contact with, we want to make sure that we're making them better and enhancing their learning experience and making education a positive overall experience. With that, there's also a couple things I want to touch upon, like 7 things to follow as you're going through when you're doing this. So when you're going to have a discrete trial training, it's kind of like 7 steps you want to make sure that you're adding, or not adding, but like what you're doing is you're following these 7 steps in order to be successful. So you have the elements of it, what we're trying to establish and control, but these are things we want to make sure we have when we're doing it. First, you want to make sure your materials are ready. You don't want to be reaching for stuff. You want to have it set up so it's smooth, so that the student doesn't feel stressed out at all that you're reaching and grabbing, and that everything you're doing is set up in a smooth, controlled manner. So you have all your materials ready. Gain the child's attention. Like we talked about earlier with discriminative stimulus and instructional control. We want to make sure a child is paying attention, because no matter who we are, what we have, and if we have any disabilities, autism, or even anything, I know for myself, I have issues concentrating. So you're going to want to make sure that you have my attention before you get started. Without having somebody's attention, you're going to miss everything else. If you don't have the attention of the child, or in this case me, you're going to have to know that these kids or these children need to make sure that they're paying attention to what you're doing. Once you have all that, then you can present the stimulus to them, the description of what you're trying to see, the new behavior. By doing that, now you're ready to move on to that behavior change. So once that's presented and stimulus, now you're looking to see, can they do it? If they do it, boom, reinforcement right away, positive, great job, handshake, whatever reinforcement tool that you're using. You want to make sure that that's being used. If that's not being, you want to use the correction procedure when necessary. Go back to the beginning, go through the trials. Don't reinforce it in a negative manner, because you don't want to put in negative to this with the child. You want to make sure everything we're doing is positive, kind of PBIS type stuff. You want that behavior to change. In order for that behavior or skill to change, you want to be positive manner. So if they don't get it, maybe we'll go back to the beginning, reinforce what you're trying to do, and see if they go. You can be collecting data as you go, because that's huge. Or you can videotape it so that the child doesn't see you writing and that they're focusing on you. I prefer to videotape. Being a football coach, we want to make things as smooth as we can. So I really like when I'm coaching or even my teaching, if I have to do corrections like this, I will go back and collect my data then, so that the student knows that I'm 100% focused on them. And when the students feel that connection, that we are focused on each other and that I'm there for them, my results, I feel, will become better and the child will improve. With all this said, the biggest thing I want to say, whatever we do, whatever training you try, whatever trial you're using, whatever type of intervention or assessment tool you're using, make sure the child knows you're there. Make sure the child understands you're there to help them, because it doesn't matter really sometimes what you know. If the child doesn't know you care, that you're there to help them, a lot of the results will kind of get skewed a little bit. So make sure you're connecting with the child, and have the child know that you're there for them to help them. Keep it positive. Keep them engaged, and therefore you'll get the results that you want, and the student's educational experience will be positive overall, and work towards a goal. Whatever goal you have and whatever behavior you're looking to change, the student is always working towards that, and you're doing it in a positive manner. Well, that's what I have to say for today's PD. If you have any questions, please see me after, and we can kind of go through a little more step by step, but I didn't want to kind of bring everything in front of everybody, because what it fits for every person. But this is what I wanted you guys to understand today, especially my parents who do a lot of working with these students. I'd like to meet with them after and kind of go through a couple of trials with them and have them go through stuff so they can understand. Considering that our parents do so much great work with our autism students and all our other kids too, but have them really focus on training, because some of this is they're going to be doing this. So I want to make sure the parents are met with and taught the proper way to discrete trial train our students. With that, they can be successful. Thank you very much, and have a great day.